Hello, and welcome to GovTech Viewpoints. My name is Teri Takai, and I'm excited to be with you for today's session. And I'm always joined by HP's Todd Gustafson for another interesting and fun conversation. Now, for those of you that have been with us before, or some of you that might be new, each episode of GovTech Viewpoints explores one big question that's facing state and local government decision makers as they really adopt the next generation technologies. Well, Todd, it's going to be hard to think of any other question or any other big topic to talk about than what's happening out in the world and how is that going to impact state and local government as they think about their budgets and their technologies. What's going on out there from your viewpoint, and what are some important things they should be thinking about?
Hello, everyone. Hi, Teri. This reminds me a little bit of my high school days from Cumberland, Rhode Island, Teri. And I remember learning something around the phrase that says, "May we live in interesting times." I was always taught that that was a Chinese proverb. Turns out that that's not true. It's actually started with the British statesman, and then was also, most importantly, reflected on with RFK in the mid '60s, 1960s, in a famous speech in South Africa. So we do live in incredibly interesting times, and it only takes, if you will, literally hours for it to change. And as you know, and as our listeners and viewers know, the single biggest thing that's happening in our environment today is the impact of tariffs. And we today sit in a situation where tariffs have been, if you will, somewhat delayed after quote unquote Liberation Day initially happened. However, we find ourselves in a situation where the tariffs on China are still very much in front of us, part of the current administration's approach. And then the rest of the world, with the exception of Canada and Mexico, have a 10% tariff. And then in Canada and Mexico, do not have tariffs for products that are operating under the USMCA. And so all that means is that there is a tremendous amount of volatility happening in the supply chain, tremendous amount of volatility that's happening for our customer partners, if you will. And here's my bit of advice as I think about this, and as we have relationships with leaders throughout the United States, is that education and awareness is paramount to what you're doing. And certainly every OEM in the marketplace understands where their products are made, what the country of origin of those products are. And they likely also understand what their resiliency and mitigation plans are for all of their platforms. And so my little bit of advice would be there can be a tremendous amount of knowledge and education that can happen to benefit you to making very good decisions for your municipalities, your states, your cities, whatever it might be, in terms of awareness and how you might navigate that. And some of that navigation might be that you need to change platforms. It might be that you might be able to get more in a platform because of the country of origin, as opposed to sticking with the country of origin of another product because of the breadth of supply chain engagement across the globe. And so that's the first thing I would say is make sure you reach out to your partners and your OEMs and understand specifics on what's happening, recognizing that it could change any hour.
The thing, though, that I think, Todd, is so important about what you said is that I think sometimes we as customers feel like we have to accept what's happening as opposed to actually inquiring or thinking that there are alternatives. So you said a couple of things that I love. First of all, it's comforting to know that the companies have thought about and are thinking about what their planning is for the future. But the second thing is that it's important to have those conversations and to feel empowered, if you will, to be proactive, to ask some of those really important questions.
I totally agree, and this is the basis of human nature, right? Engagement and communication and awareness. And so I think we all do ourselves an injustice when we don't probe. For anybody that works in my organization, they know I'm a question asker, right? I always say, why? So what? Help me understand those kind of questions. And to your point, Teri, I think it's incumbent upon our colleagues in state and local government to take that same approach with saying, what are my options? What could I do differently to help mitigate that? And I would tell you that OEMs that are truly your partners will help you navigate a fairly complex environment because, frankly, there are options for organizations that are out there. They may not be all the prettiest of options, and they likely will have some impact, but at least organizations can help mitigate that in a way that makes them understand that they're getting the best possible value for their state, for their municipality, if you will.
No, I think that's so important, Todd. And I think the point that you were making too is that you may stay with the platform you've got, just look at something a little bit differently. You might change platform. There's not really any assumption of that. It's more around just being that informed buyer and being able to ask things around country of origin and how that's going to impact the whole, if you will, bill of material. Because it really isn't only just what we look at. It's all of the component parts and really what is in the bill of material and how that is impacted from a supply chain perspective as well, right?
No doubt. And it's a basic presumption that a lot of large technology OEMs will have, given that we are a global and economy, if you will, that there'll be choice points that they all can make in terms of what they're going to go do. And what may be today's news might likely change in 30 days. And so if you work with your OEMs and or your partners, but particularly your OEMs, can help you understand and navigate what may be today and what might be tomorrow. And you may decide that you want to accelerate your purchases based upon what you know. You may decide that you want to make a more thoughtful decision and wait 30 days because your choices will be different as you go along. But again, back to the basics, which is supply chains are evolving, country of origin is evolving. Tariffs are, we're in a 90-day pause right now on the majority of tariffs, with the exception of the 10% tariff across the board, universal tariff. And so it certainly creates a headache for everybody, no doubt. We recognize that. OEMs, customers, all of that. But I'm encouraged, if you will, that there are an incredibly amount of really smart people that are helping to drive the best possible outcomes for all of you.
No, and I like that as well, Todd, because I think sometimes we think about an issue as being very much in our own individual silos, depending on where you are in that ecosystem. And I think it's encouraging to hear from you and know that you're thinking about it, that government you're willing to work with and help government think about it to come together. Well,
can I just add one more thing to that, Teri?
Absolutely.
Which is, I'm a senior leader. I think I have a lot of peers out in the industry. Engage us. If you don't know, use LinkedIn, reach out to us. We are, what I would say is right now in a very dynamic environment, and leverage the leadership at your within your OEMs or partners to help you make even more educated decisions.
Well, and Todd, thank you for that, because I think we're all a little hesitant to who can we reach out to? And so thank you for offering to really be a part of that communication, to really help. And, you'll probably get a lot of LinkedIn requests, but it's great because you get to hear exactly what people are thinking as well. Back to your point, kind of about the two-way communication.
Absolutely.
Well, Todd, I think the next piece of this is going to be to try to understand this part of the changing landscape and how it's going to potentially play with the drive that we're seeing across governments to really become more efficient and effective. So what are some of the things that listeners can be kind of getting ready for in our next conversation?
So virtually everyone has heard of Doge, and depending upon where you sit on the political spectrum, you may put that aside. At its core, it's around driving efficiency, right? And I think we can all get behind efficiency. And if we look at AI as an example, AI in itself drives efficiency. Microsoft Copilot drives efficiency. But there is a layer of tools that are being introduced in the marketplace that will give all of us a very comprehensive dashboard in terms of how to manage our entire environment in a way that we can make choice points on driving efficiency. And that's what we're going to talk about next time, because I've been with HP for 35 years plus, and I think this evolvement with AI and these tools are probably some of the more exciting things that I've seen introduced in the industry.
Fantastic. And by the way, the next time too, Todd, we're going to actually explore some specific examples of things that you're doing, just to make sure that we all know that we can learn to do new things. Well, Todd, I'm going to wrap for today. Thanks to everyone for listening to GovTech Viewpoints. Be sure to subscribe to the series on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Spotify so you won't miss a single episode. So just to repeat, next time, Todd and I are going to focus on the next big question, which is, what does the focus on government efficiency and effectiveness mean for IT leaders? We'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Have a great day.